All right, well, let's get started. So everyone, um, again, once again, this is Marc Young with XLM Solutions, and thank you for this roundtable around the 3D Experience platform. We really want it to be a open discussion. So I will unmute everyone. Feel free to contribute as necessary. Um, and um, and hopefully we can have an open discussion. Really, we're here to discuss any topics you may have, so feel free to contribute and bring up topics. That being said, if everyone wants to be quiet, we've also put together various topics to have a discussion around as well. I want to let everyone know that this is being recorded, so if there is an issue of this being recorded and possibly published to our website, please act accordingly. But with that, let me get started. And I'm just going to unmute everyone here real quick. I believe everyone is unmuted, unless you personally mute yourself. So if you do have background noise, please mute yourself. But that being said, hopefully you'll talk up and we can have an open discussion. That being said, a little bit about XLM Solutions. For those of you who do not know us, we are a PLM services and solutions company. We've been around since 2005, so we have over 17 years of providing expertise around PLM and PDM implementations. We have conducted over 500 PLM projects and do everything from general consulting, assessments, needs assessments, PLM assessments, to implementations, configurations, data migrations, customizations, and training and support. We have a worldwide team throughout the United States, North America, India, and Europe. We recently opened an office last year in Toulouse, France. And really, we cover the main services and software portfolio of Dassault Systems. So we handle, obviously, 3DEXPERIENCE and Innovia, but also do work around SolidWorks PDM, Innovia Smart Team, and some of the other softwares within the Dassault portfolio. Just for me, another nicer picture of me. I'm a managing partner or one of the founding members of XLM Solutions, for those of you who don't know me. So let's get started. Today, we actually did a roundtable a little bit over 3 months ago, which went fairly nicely. And today we're doing another one and wanted to highlight some of the main topics and discussion points from last roundtable we did. So we'll be talking about, data migration, 3D experience implementations, collaboration.
Mark, sorry to interrupt. This is Ilan. For me, I'm only seeing the main page. I don't know if everyone else is it only on my side or.
All right, am I not showing my screen? How about now?
Yes. No,
All
good.
right. So sorry about that. Here was the about slide where I went over XLM Solutions. Picture of me, Marc Young, one of the owners of XLM Solutions and a founding partner, and then the agenda. So as mentioned, we will be talking about data migrations, 3D experience implementations, collaborations, best practices, widgets and customizations, and then cloud versus on-premise for the 3D experience. Also to mention that there is chat, so if you don't want to speak up, you can always chat your comments and I'll bring those up as well. So the first topic, data migrations. So when, and again, please chat or speak up. If not, I'll just talk and give you my viewpoints on these topics. Um, but, definitely would welcome an interactive conversation. Um, Data migrations, with many 3D experience or any, this could apply to any type of PDM or PLM implementation. Usually data migration is an aspect of it. In many cases, customers are coming from a legacy system or have legacy data and want to be able to use their data within the new system within 3D Experience. Obviously, if you're a startup or a type of company, you may not have legacy data, it won't apply. But many customers that we face today, do have data and are looking to move it into 3D Experience. So, the first point to make is if you have 3D experience, and we'll talk about our cloud versus on cloud in more detail, but it's very important to understand if you have 3D experience cloud or more of an on-premise solution. So when I talk about cloud, unless I say specifically, I'll be talking about the DS public cloud that Dassault provides. So Dassault provides a 3D Experience tenant that they will manage that you can use. Or you have an option of installing 3D Experience on-premise or hosted yourself, which you as the end customer would most likely manage. So why am I spending time talking about public cloud versus on-premise? And the key point is there is much less or limited capabilities to load data to the Dassault public cloud than there is to load to the on-premise environment. So that is changing, and Dassault will be providing more tools to load data to the cloud solutions. But today, there is definitely limitations on what can be loaded to the cloud. So anyone out there that is considering the Dassault public cloud versus the on-premise version, if data loading is a requirement, you got to definitely weigh the pros and cons between the two. Most likely, if you definitely need to load legacy data, the on-premise solution will be what you need to go with. That being said, I know Dassault is working on tools to load data to the cloud from SolidWorks PDM and from Smart Team, and those tools could be adapted to really load data from almost any system to the public cloud. However, what we've heard is those tools will be coming out in 2023, and most likely will need a little maturing before they can really work. But today, there are many mature tools to load data to the on-premise solution. The next point, assessing data to be migrated. So with any data migration, and this is really generic to any PLM data migration, it's really important to understand that legacy data that needs to be migrated. What system is it in? Is it in another database? Is it folder based? Is it CAD data? Is it just metadata? Is it non-CAD files? So really understanding what that legacy data is, and making sure that it can be extracted in a method to be imported. So with every data migration project, you can almost break it into two parts: an extraction or an export part from the source system or the legacy system, and then an import into the the new system or 3D experience. So it's the first part is really assessing the data to make sure it can be exported and extracted in a way that can be imported. And I would say many legacy systems, legacy PLM, PDM systems, are based on databases, and those databases can be reverse engineered to understand where the data is coming from to be able to extract them. And we at XLM Solutions have expertise in many different PLM, PDM systems to do that extraction. But sometimes you need to bring in a third-party expert to do that extraction. So we're not always going to say that we're the the experts on everything. But as long as there is a party that can extract the data to a, let's say, neutral format, that can be used to be imported to your PLM system or 3D experience. The other bullet here is mapping data to 3D experience. It's very important to not just say I want to migrate data from 3D, from my legacy system with 3D experience, but really understand how that data will be mapped over. 3D experience works in its own unique ways. There's various concepts like VPM references, which represents your parts and your bill of materials structure, documents, collaborative spaces. Each document or each object has a state. You can have routes to route the data. You have CAs or change actions for changes. So you really need to understand how your legacy data will map over to your 3D experience, data model structure. What will go over as a document, what will go over as a part, will they be loaded to different collab spaces or one collab space? Are you going to make use of bookmarks within 3D experience? And if so, how will the data be mapped to different bookmarks? In your legacy system, you may have different states for the different objects, and in 3D experience, you have, let's say the main states of in work, frozen, released, and obsolete. So how will data be mapped to those states? If you're managing change in the legacy system, how will that map over? So a lot of work is done in any data migration project. Is not necessarily migrating the data, but really understanding how that data can map over. And I should say, to understand that, you really need to understand how 3D experience works. So we recommend, and this is sort of part of a full-blown implementation where data migration is a part of it, but really get a good understanding of how 3D experience works, its different components and how it operates. So then we can do an intelligent data mapping exercise to make sure the right data gets mapped into 3D experience as necessary. And perhaps we need to extend 3D experience, extend the data model to support certain, customer or user processes or data mappings that aren't there out of the box within 3D experience. Next point I want to mention is picking the correct migration technology. So there's different ways to migrate data into 3D experience, and based on what what you need to migrate over will be based on what you choose to migrate the data. So so for example, when you're doing CAD migrations, in many cases it's recommended to use a technology called XPDM to migrate the CAD data over, where XPDM will take the data, it will basically do a CAD introspector, it will inspect all the CAD and its links and create similar structures within 3D experience. It'll also help create any viewable files, CGRs, etc., and build that correct data model. The managing CAD within 3D experience, the underlying data model can be fairly complex. So XPM takes care of a lot of that underlying data model setup that needs to be done. So that would be one tool to migrate data into XPDM, into 3D Experience XPM. And most of these tools that I'm talking about really, again, work for on-premise only. So if you're on cloud, you don't have access to these tools today. Another way to migrate data would be to write your own custom migration scripts. So you can definitely write, code that reads, let's say, records from a database, and then automatically creates an object within 3DEXPERIENCE. The downside of that is you really need to understand what that underlying data model is. So if you're just creating objects within 3DEXPERIENCE, make sure you're setting the correct fields correctly and the relationships correctly. But a lot of times you need to go at that level if tools like XPDM doesn't support what you need to migrate. It should be mentioned if anyone has heard of EDAT. So EDAT is another tool, it stands for Accelerated Innovia Data Acceleration Toolkit. So the EDAT tool, which supports migrating data from Smart Team or SolidWorks PDM, or even migrating from an old, I'm going to use the term Matrix 1 or Innovia Designer Central environment to a 3DEXPERIENCE powered by environment, all make use of that XPDM technology. So that's another way to do it. But if you're going to write your own scripts, you could, program within Java. You could write MQL commands, TQL commands to also load data. So it really depends on what is the the data that needs to be loaded, how it's going to be mapped, and then tools can be found. There's also technology called adaptlets, which can basically map data or load data from one database to a Dassault database as well. Regarding on public cloud, like I said, there's ways to load only one revision or one version of a file from a folder structure today through the public cloud. It's like a file upload, but it doesn't really let you set attributes. It doesn't let you if you want to load revision C, you can't necessarily do it. It would come in as the initial revision A. So so today there's a way to load small sets of data through methodology for the cloud, but in the future Dassault will be making use of the integration framework technology, which is also used to integrate with ERP, but that same integration framework technology should be able to load, do larger data loads into the cloud. One thing to consider though with the cloud is, a lot of times with data migration, you're going to load data, review it, and then wipe the environment and then reload the data. With the cloud, it's harder to do that wiping of the environment. So, so I'm sure some methodologies will need to be put in place to refresh or clean a cloud environment as a migration project is going along. And then finally, with data migration, again, it's very important to do testing and validating of the migration. Usually, no data is migrated correctly the first time. It's very important for any customer to review what was migrated, test it, validate it, make sure it looks good. Normally, issues will be found, possibly, you'll figure out, yes, we said map it this way, but now that we see the data, we want to map it a different way. So usually multiple test cycles and iterations of data migration will happen before we have a good working migration solution. So, it's very critical in any migration project to allocate time to test and validate the data and factor in multiple migration iterations before that final production migration can be done. All right, any input, questions, comments on data migration?
So I have one comment, Mark, regarding the cloud, the public cloud. There are a few APIs, or quite a few, that Dassault has developed. Those are mainly for metadata. So if you're using any of the XCAD, like the CAD connectors V5, SolidWorks, you cannot upload or write into the environment. That will only be supported, like Mark said, through the integration exchange framework in the future. You can read data. You can also create data like VPN references. It's mainly oriented towards UPS. So if you're on Design Central or Engineering Central, those web services, from what we know, are not available for that data model. But you can create things like VPN references, document, including uploading, like non-CAD documents, manufacturing equivalent, things like that are supported for the public cloud, but again, limited for metadata only in the UPS data model, not the old Designer or Engineering Central data model. That's
All
it,
right.
Mark.
Thanks, Elon. All right, next topic. So this topic will be about general 3D experience implementations. And again, whether you're implementing on the Dassault public cloud or on premise, will really have a factor of how that implementation goes. And the reason I'm saying that is the 3D experience on cloud solution is a lot limited in what you can configure or customize than the on-premise. So, depending if you can be truly out of the box or you need to do more configuration customization will obviously depend on what's involved in the implementation. And there's always the debate of we want to be 100% out of the box, which is great, but there's also the reality that each company has their unique processes, unique ways of working, and as 3D experiences develop to be generic and work in the best way possible, how it's set up is not always how companies want to work or should work. And I say there is valid reasons to customize or configure in specific situations. It's you want to manage that, but there is a lot of benefits that customers can achieve by putting in unique, configurations or customizations to handle their unique processes. But that is limited on the Dassault public cloud. So, talking about implementations, the first thing is really assessing the scope of the implementation. Is it going to be, just CAD data management? Is it going to be CAD data management and change? Is it going to be, bill of material management? Are you going to do, integration to ERP? Are you going to, want to implement a quality solution or a requirements management solution or model-based engineering? So usually, with any 3D experience implementation or project, customers get excited and they say, yeah, I want all of it. It's great. I need all of it. And then, reality sets in and it's like, for sure we can do all of it, but really we want to, start small and grow. You do all of it at once, you'll never finish and you can never really focus on, individual pieces. So, switching to my bottom bullet here, we really believe in a phased approach. Implement it in phases, do simple wins, roll it out, and then grow the implementation from there. Don't try to bite off too much at once. And even sometimes say, well, we have all this in our legacy system, so we need all this for go live. Which may be a valid statement, but if possible, try to, break the implementation to smaller chunks. Maybe you're going to, use both systems, in parallel at first, where 3DEXPERIENCE will be using BOM management, but you're still managing CAD in the legacy system. So, we really push and try to do small phases, manageable phases, roll out the functionality, get the quick win, and then move on to the next phase. I'd say one of the hardest parts of implementation is when implementing 3DEXPERIENCE for that first time customer who's really hasn't had a lot of experience around 3DEXPERIENCE. they have been sold, they've gone through the sales process, they have all the sales, all the marketing information, but until you get your hands on the product, you don't know what you don't know, and you maybe realize you ask questions that, or you didn't ask questions that you should have asked, or you didn't think of scenarios that you should have. And if you haven't heard me say it, I'll say it again: the devil's always in the details. That doesn't always happen, during that initial sales or evaluation process. So, it's always difficult implementing for the first time, because as the end customer, you're getting familiar with the platform. You're realizing what works, what doesn't work, and how it behaves at a fairly detailed level. And we, as let's say an implementer, are understanding how you work, how you do your job, and how that can or cannot be set up in 3DEXPERIENCE. So we're really having some learning curves on both sides, which is always challenges, to get to that level of comfort, with let's say us XLM understanding how you work, and you, the end customer, understanding how 3DEXPERIENCE works. But with a phased approach, that first phase is kind of the difficult phase. But once that's done, you as the customer and us really have a good understanding of how the product works, how you work, and then implementing additional phases are a lot easier because you have a good base to work against. A lot of that understanding of the solution is now there, and it's easy to roll out additional phases once that base is in place. But like anything, putting that foundation in place, takes time and energy. And part of that goes into organizational change. And what I mean by that is, it's gonna, take time to implement 3DEXPERIENCE. So management, the company should be aware of that. But how people work within 3DEXPERIENCE may be different of how they worked in the legacy system. And do you want to customize 3DEXPERIENCE to work just like your legacy system works, or do you want to make use of some of the best practices and behaviors in 3DEXPERIENCE? And if so, that's going to require people to change how they work. And that's where we really need management to embrace that and help push, not just we're using a new system, but it may change how end users use the system, what different end users do, etc. So it's not just a technical change, but it's really a organizational change too, of how people work and how people interact with the system. And that should be well aware, and management, implementers, even end users, need to be aware that that's going to happen. Also, you want to make sure you have the right resources for implementing 3DEXPERIENCE. 3DEXPERIENCE is can be a big animal, and you want to make sure you have the right implementers in place, or the right resources. So, I would say on cloud, boom, they spin up an environment, so you don't need to maintain any infrastructure, backups, upgrades, etc. So for on cloud, you don't really need an infrastructure expert. It's kind of done for you. And development on cloud is limited in a lot of ways, so you may not need a developer. But the other roles you would need, and on premise, you may need these roles. So a solution architect is a key word, I would say, to be the main go-to person, which will help you implement 3DEXPERIENCE. They're pretty knowledgeable in how it works, how the different modules work, how to configure it, how to implement it. So they're kind of that one-on-one person to guide you and lead you through the implementation. They'll help do the mapping exercises with you if it's data migration, and help you configure the different solutions. If you're going to implement an on-premise solution, you also will need some infrastructure experts. So, the 3DEXPERIENCE runs either on Windows or Linux. There's various server components that need to be set up. It makes use of the Apache, Tommy, web infrastructure for serving out and running the services. So you'll need to configure Tommy. Depending on the number of users and the different modules being used, may require multiple machines. It might require load balancing, and all that stuff is something we would look at the infrastructure expert to help support. A lot of times these roles can be the same person, but at the same time, someone can't be an expert in everything, so you may need multiple people. Developers. So if customization is needed, you may need developers, and they obviously could be external people, not always internal people, but developers to help develop code and customization, whether that's based on triggers within the system, widgets, external solutions. But there is the possibility to do development in multiple areas. If you want to develop within, let's say, the native client or the CATIA interface, there's EKL code, which stands for Enterprise Knowledgeware, which can be done. If you want to develop your own widgets within the solution, you need to be experienced in JavaScript, HTML, and web services. There's a Java API for the solution as well. So depending on the development, there's different skill sets required to provide that customization. Testers, you want to have a set of, I would say, end users after a system is configured. There's definitely the concept of testing it, making it go through UAT, user acceptance testing. Normally, you will go through the processes, test it, find holes, and need to reconfigure things. So make sure you have testers available. And then finally, project management, and I'd say technical management or technical lead. All these steps need to be glued together, and each resource will have dependencies on other resources, and dependencies on hardware being available, and dependencies on mapping exercises being done, and dependencies on systems being reset. So you definitely also need project management, to make sure that work is being done, dependencies are being handled, risks, if we run into an issue, such risks are being managed, and the project is being expedited, as necessary. So there's some project management definitely is involved. And then I think I talked about the phased approach, where we like to implement in a phased approach, quick wins, and then get the customer familiar with the solution, up and running, and then move on to the next functional or solution topic they want to implement within 3DEXPERIENCE. All right, before I move on, any questions, comments on this slide? All right, then I'll move on to the next slide. Collaboration best practices. So this is a little bit specific to 3DEXPERIENCE, though it again could apply to other PLM systems. But a lot of times people are looking or are being sold on 3DEXPERIENCE to foster collaboration, both within the company, within the enterprise, but also with external suppliers and vendors. So I would not just say lightly, let's purchase and implement 3DEXPERIENCE, and then we'll have, all these collaboration scenarios up and working. Really it takes time and effort to implement, collaboration scenarios that work best for you and possibly your suppliers. So really, the first step is understanding, if you are going to collaborate, let's say with an external company, what is that type of collaboration? Is it, does the external company just need read-only access to your data? and we assume it would be only read access to specific parts of your data, not every data within 3Experience? Are you going to be doing joint designs? Are you going to working together, designing something? And have to work interactively on different parts, let's say within the same assembly. Is it going to be, I know it says exchange state, but I think it should have said exchange data. Is it going to be more of a data exchange scenario? For example, build to print, where you want to export or exchange drawings to a supplier that's going to build the parts, or you want to exchange a part to a supplier that might build a tool or a mold for that part. So what types of collaborations do you need to support? Are you going to assume your suppliers have 3DEXPERIENCE, or they could have any system? So really, again, is assessing what the scenarios are for exchange is, and then we can advise on what's the best way to set up 3DEXPERIENCE. Within 3Experience, the whole security model is basically around P&O, or people and organizations. So that deals with people, which are users, organizations, which are I'm going to use the term collab spaces. Collab space is a way to group data and have different permissions around it. So for those of you not familiar with 3DEXPERIENCE, there's the concept of roles, and there's roles such as a contributor, which is more like a viewer, a leader, which is almost like a manager role, author, which is the role to create data, and owner, which has some more higher permissions. So users are assigned a role to their collab space. So you could be an author in one collab space and a contributor or viewer in another collab space. Collab spaces have their own types of permissions, whether it's a private collab space where all the data is hidden, or a public collab space where the data is not hidden. So based on your collaboration scenarios, your security scenarios, that's where we really need to work and map out how to best set up the P&O to support those scenarios. And it's not a trivial task. It really takes a lot of thinking and setup to make it work. There's a lot of tools to work with, but it's not a fully configured tool based on what that unique collaboration scenario is. And a lot of times, this is where a lot of time is spent within a project to make sure this is set up correctly. And then on top of that, I'd say there's additional security solutions that could be put in place. So there's bookmarks, which are ways to organize data in like a folder or bookmark structure, and security could be applied to the bookmark. You can individually share data with a user in a group. So if they don't, if a certain user doesn't have access to data, you could individually share that data with them. Within the roles that users are assigned to, there are restricted roles, which give them author edit abilities, but in a restricted fashion. There's other modules within 3DEXPERIENCE that applies additional security. So there's an IP security module, and that's a module that can apply ITAR security for companies that work with both, let's say, secured government projects and non-government projects. The IP security solution comes into play. Or if you just have different levels of security, maybe you have a top secret project, and in that case, the IP security could work as well. So, and then there's also customizations that could be put in place to handle security. So, collaboration is a very interesting topic, and it means a lot to different companies. But to sum up again, it's very important to define how you want to collaborate, set up your P&O correctly to support that, both with external users and internal users. And then there are other security solutions or tools or functionality of the system to help implement that solution. Talking about a phased approach, I would say external collaboration, I would look at probably in a future phase, not necessarily setting that up initially. Let's get it initially working within your four walls, and then discuss how a collaboration solution may come into play. Any questions on this before I move on to the next slide? All right, we're moving on, and hopefully this is all coming well good, but please speak up if you have any questions or comments. So widgets and customizations. As I mentioned, the big question is, do I customize or not? And what is considered a customization versus a configuration? So we truly believe, and again, we're not here to say it because we make money off customizations, but we truly believe that PLM systems and 3DEXPERIENCE can get more bang for your buck if you add some customizations to it to better enhance your working processes. If something that takes 10 minutes per engineer per day to do something that could customize and save that to, let's say, 30 seconds, if you have 30 engineers and they're saving 10 minutes a day, that's 300 minutes in a single day. So I think there are areas where customization makes sense. If users are making the same mistake over and over again and it's causing delays, perhaps we could write a customization to do some validation so they don't make that mistake. So we believe there's value there. It's managing how much do you customize versus not customize. And then the question is, what's considered a customization versus a configuration? So when we say customization, yes, we may be writing code, but it's code that the system allows us to put into their system. It's not like we're changing the core code of 3DEXPERIENCE. 3DEXPERIENCE allows us to input or hook in additional code, and that's what we're doing. So it's customizations. Yes, we're writing code, but it's customizations that are supported by 3DEXPERIENCE. So it's not like we're changing core code. And with customizations, the concern is when I upgrade, I'm not going to be able to upgrade, or it's going to take longer. And those are valid concerns and something to factor when deciding if you should customize or not. But we believe, and we've seen it, if you do the customizations right and properly, it really will have minimal effect on the upgrade. So, in our case, we're always here to work with you and weigh pros and cons if you should customize or not. But if we feel you're going to get value out of it, then we're here to support you in doing it. So if you decide to customize, there's different technologies within 3DEXPERIENCE that you can make use of, depending on what customization you need. So web services, obviously Innovia is a web-based application, and there are public web services out there that can be used to do events. So Dassault, and there's help technologies, but they list a bunch of web services to do events. If you wanted to create an object, update an object, delete an object, link an object, there's web services out there to do those features. And you can obviously write code to call those web services, which then interacts with 3DEXPERIENCE to do the work. You can also, for on-premise, you could also write your own web services if there isn't any out of the box for what you need done. EKL, as I mentioned, stands for Enterprise Knowledge Language, and that's used a lot to customize CATIA or operations in CATIA, for example, and we just showed a YouTube video on it. When a material was linked to a CAT part or CATIA data, not only was the material linked, but that material name was automatically placed in a field or a data property on the properties page for that part. So that was done in EKL. And EKL can run on triggers. So when I save, something within the native client, an EKL trigger will run to do that work. There's also, I'd say, the legacy way to do customizations, which are triggers, which make use of Java and Java code, the Java API to do the customization as well. So there's different, to sum up, and we could have a whole probably hour-long webinar on different customizations. And again, looking for maybe some little interaction here, but there's a lot of different technologies out there depending on what you want to customize to customize 3D experience. So the good news there is if you do want to customize, there's lots of different things you can do it. I'd say maybe the bad news is depending on what you customize, you may need to have expertise in different languages, different technologies, whether it's web services, Java programming, EKL, possibly JavaScript, possibly HTML development. Will depend on what you need to customize. And then for the, again, as mentioned, some of the customizations are limited on the public cloud. So with the public cloud, you can make use of public web services, but not create your own web services. On the public cloud, many cases you can make use of EKL, but there are certain areas where the EKL may not get triggered. If you're going to do legacy triggers, they do not work on the public cloud, but obviously would work on an on-premise implementation. Also, widgets, I'm talking about customizations in general. I would say widgets, moving forward, 3DEXPERIENCE wants most of the functionality done through the 3D dashboard. And the 3D dashboard is made up of different widget components, which have different functionalities. The out-of-the-box widgets or roles like a engineering release or a Zen role or a product structure viewer role cannot be customized today, but you can create your own widgets to do your own thing. So definitely you can create your own widgets, and your own custom widget could interact with an out-of-the-box widget. So widget development is one of the key or new technologies and exciting technologies that we've been doing for customers. And I should say widgets can be deployed to both on-premise and public cloud customers. There are probably some limits to the type of widget that can be done on a public cloud, but you could implement a widget technically on both on-premise and public cloud as well. And I think we got a question here. So let me see. Here we go. So the question is, through EKL, can we trigger a web service? Actually, we have a couple questions here that I'm seeing for the first time. I apologize. But per that question, I think there is limitation of EKL calling a web service. I don't think it can. We've also had that question, and I believe the answer was no, and maybe only in specific scenarios or with specific licenses something can be done. But I would say that no, in general, web services cannot be called from EKL. There is a question here that says, we were told yesterday that 3DX is configurable and not customizable. Well, I would, challenge them. What do they mean by configurable and not customizable? I would also say, as I said, there's the Dassault public cloud versus more of an on-premise implementation. And is that answer related to the public cloud or the on-premise? If it's related to the public cloud, I would say the public cloud is a lot less customizable than on-premise, but there are still some, I'm going to say limited ways where you can do customization on the public cloud. If you're doing an on-premise, I would say it's very customable based on what you want. I think again, many customers that are new to 3DEXPERIENCE are dealing with the sales team, and I'm not going to say anything good or bad about salespeople. I'm an implementer, but the Dassault probably tagline is, yes, this configure it, don't customize it. You can do everything through configuration, but you really need to challenge that statement and prove to yourself if the 3DEXPERIENCE solution can be configured to meet your needs, or you may need to enhance it in certain areas. And that goes down to not just looking at the solution for an hour, but spending time, days, really assessing what your true requirements are and mapping them out and proving that they that the PLM solution or 3DEXPERIENCE will meet your needs, which maybe is a small pilot, or some very detailed workshops. So but to say that 3DEXPERIENCE is true is configurable and not customizable, I would disagree with that statement. Okay, next topic. Cloud versus on-premise. So this is the last topic of the day. And I pretty much said a lot of stuff about it already, but to bring it home or to rehash everything, when people say cloud, there's really different types of cloud out there. So there's the Dassault public cloud, and that's hosted by Dassault, maintained by Dassault. It's a truly hosted system by Dassault. You don't have access to any back end systems. You don't control when upgrades are done. You don't control how backups are done. Dassault does everything for you, basically, from a infrastructure point of view. There is what may be considered a private cloud. So I consider private cloud where you go out and say, Amazon cloud, I need to buy or rent servers in your cloud, but we will, as a company or our provider, will actually install 3DEXPERIENCE in that cloud environment that we fully control. So a private cloud is a company buying the cloud servers, but they are in charge, or their implementer is in charge of installing and maintaining the environment on that cloud environment. And Dassault has a private cloud offering. Obviously, any company can buy their own space and install the software in the private cloud, or there's some managed private clouds where a third party is managing that cloud tenant for them, even though they have full control over it. And then there's hosted, which is or on-premise, I should say, where you have the servers within your four walls, and like any other server you may own, they're managing 3DEXPERIENCE. Private cloud or hosted, I kind of lump into the same bucket. It's just kind of physically, where are the servers? Are they in the cloud? Are they, physically at your company? But at the same time, you have really full control over them. DS public cloud, really, you don't have control to the servers. You only have control to the application. So, a lot of times is, what do we do? Do we go Dassault public cloud? Do we go private cloud? Do we go hosted? And again, various pros and cons can be weighted, and a best guess or a judgment call can be made. Usually startup companies, small companies, public cloud is the best solution. For companies that have a lot of legacy data, I'd say very defined PLM processes, then usually the private or the hosted cloud is important. If you're dealing with military data, the Dassault public cloud is not ITAR compliant. Non-US citizens will have access to the public cloud. So this is out, so one of these solutions would be required. So, here's the considerations. I'd say, if you truly want hands-off IT, meaning you don't want to maintain servers, you don't want to do backups, you don't want to do upgrades, you don't want to install software, then the public cloud is, the way to go. And a lot of people say, yes, that's exactly what I want. But, there's some downsides to it as well. So, maybe good or bad, you don't control upgrades. The public cloud gets upgraded every quarter. But if you want to maintain an older version of the software for some reason, i.e. your customer is using that older version, you don't control when the software gets upgraded. It just automatically gets upgraded per quarterly. ITAR security. So as I said, the Dassault public cloud is not ITAR compliant. Non-US citizens can get access to it. So if you need to maintain ITAR data, then the Dassault public cloud is really not applicable to you.
It's also, I believe, Mark, beyond that, I think they can't control where the physical files are. They have like multiple data centers across the world, and obviously ITAR, you cannot.
Correct. I mean, not only is non-US citizens may have access to the underlying, hardware infrastructure, but there's multiple, Dassault public services around the world, and the data could get physically replicated to a non-US location. So not only is it not not limited to non-US citizens, the data may be replicated to other places. The whole customization configuration. As I said, it's limited to Dassault public cloud, what you can customize and configure. And so, if the Dassault public cloud and the functionality works perfectly for you out of the box, then great. But if you have specific processes or ways you work and the out of the box doesn't handle them, then you may need customization or more detailed configuration, and that may move you into a on-premise or some type of private hosted system. Testing environment. With the cloud, you get one environment. I mean, you can purchase multiple cloud tenants, but you get one environment. Where on private or hosted, you can install as many environments you want. So if you need a development environment, a testing environment, a QA environment, a training environment, a production environment, and be able to refresh those environments whenever you wanted to, really a private or hosted solution's needed versus a public cloud where you kind of get that one environment. Technically, you could purchase multiple tenants, but usually that's not done. And then data migration, as I mentioned, data migration is limited on the public cloud today. That is being expanded, but it is limited today. So if you do have a lot of legacy data you want to migrate, again, a private or hosted solution is what you really need to go with today. Any questions here before I move on? All right, well, this is coming to the end. Thank you for attending this, roundtable and various topics on 3D experience. If I didn't answer your question, please reach out to me. I'm happy to have individual dialogue with anyone about these topics or any other topic around 3D experience or PLM in general. If you want to sign up for our newsletter that we send out quarterly, please go to our website. There's a link to our newsletter on it. Access to old newsletters, our blog, and then we definitely have a YouTube channel with various videos and presentations around 3D experience, SolidWorks, PDM, and PLM in general. But with that, thank you very much for your time. If we can help in any way, once again, here's my contact information. Please reach out. I'd be happy to answer any questions or discuss any comments or be a sounding board for what was told to you and let you know my opinion on that as well. But once again, thank you. And I will hang out here for a couple of minutes if anyone has any additional questions or comments. But with that, have a great rest of the day, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.